Hello everybody and welcome back to Middle-earth and another Wainriders update. This is Count MRVHS and today we're looking at the Highland Tribes, one of the Easterling factions in the map. And this is one I'm very excited for, as a matter of fact. The Highland Tribes are a faction that is going to share the Wainriders culture with Great Rune and the Western Horde. However, they're going to stand somewhat apart. The idea behind this faction is that in the increasing growth of the Wainriders, not all men in the East were happy about that. Not all men were willing to join the Wainriders in their wars against the West, and some of them may just have wanted to establish their own power bases away from the others. And so these tribes represent Easterlings who have been pushed or driven or just gone off of their own volition into the Highlands of the North. And that does bring up a point that we haven't discussed yet, I don't think, in any of these videos, and that is that we are making some changes to the campaign map in this part of the world. Those of you who are familiar with 4th Age Total War know that we don't really have the Oro Carni represented in that map in Dominion of Men. However, that is going to change a little bit with the Wainriders map. We are adding sort of a northwestern spur of that range. It's going to be located kind of east-northeast of the Sea of Rune, just along the edge of the map, just a little bit of it, so that these guys can have a place to kind of retreat to, and that is, of course, the idea behind the faction. They've been pushed into those mountains or driven there or just gone to prosecute their own sort of guerrilla war against the other Easterlings. So let's take a look at these units. This is going to be a mostly infantry-based faction, and here you see the peak in some ways of that development. The Highland Warriors are a Tier 3 unit, which is as high as you can get for the military development of your Mannish troops. They are a spear and javelin unit, and so that highlights again that this is not going to be a traditional sort of faction in terms of swords, axes, those types of things. You're mostly a hunter, guerrilla warfare, ambushing, a lot of skirmish. And so that is in some ways exemplified by this unit, which is indeed the best of your warriors of the line. Your bodyguard unit, in fact, is going to be a bow and spear unit, and so this is going to be a little bit tricky to use in some ways. You'll have to choose the engagements carefully because, of course, you don't want them to get shot. You don't want them to get into a fight with elite swords or axes. But if they get charged by cavalry, they do have spears, so they're going to be a little more dangerous than you might expect. Over here on the right side of the line, we have step axes. This is kind of a unit that's shared by the other Wainriders as well. Just a basic axe warrior unit, but they do have war cry, at least in this current version of the mod. And so they're going to be able to punch a little bit above their weight, although don't expect the best staying power from them. And right in the back, we've got your Tier 1, just Highland Warband unit. But in terms of units that you're going to want to make the most use of, I would say that for the Highland Tribes, skirmish is going to be extremely important. So you've got some step skirmishers at Tier 1, and you've got some Highland archers at Tier 2, and of course your own Highland bodyguard unit is going to help in that regard. You also have some mounted units, not many though. The only sort of native mounted cavalry you're going to have are these mounted skirmishers. And so bringing a couple of units to them in a battle is going to greatly help your mobility and just allow you to do those hit and fade attacks. In terms of other Mannish troops, you have hunting packs. We're just releasing the dogs from ambush here, and they're going to quickly get these woodman axes routed. I really like the model on these hunting packs handlers, though, with a sort of fur hood cape kind of a thing. And behind them, we have one unit that you may see, but it'll depend on how you build, and this is Berserkers. Now, those of you who know Rome Total War or mods based on it know that Berserkers are extremely powerful. This is a unit that you're going to get if you go sort of Ways of the Darkness, with this faction. So this is not something you will always get necessarily, depending on what buildings you build. We're still determining exactly how that's going to work, but you also get the option of these Riders of Ara. Now, that's what we're calling them currently. The unit names may change. But this is a horse archer unit that is actually also going to have a spear. And so they're very well armed. In some ways, kind of like a mounted version of your bodyguard unit. And so choosing between these two is going to be kind of difficult. The Berserkers, of course, are going to offer you a great deal of offensive power. But these Riders are going to give you just a very powerful cavalry unit and some more ranged ability in that skirmish area. This is somewhat of a reference to the Vala Orome, who of course rode into the east during the first age of Middle-earth. Now, the reason for this reference, this would be sort of if you go down a Ways of the West path, is that we imagined not all men in the East would have followed with the Wainriders. The Wainriders are organized or stirred up or helped in their development by Sauron to some extent. And so we imagine that there was some resistance going on. We know that there were wars that frequently cropped up between factions in the East. And so the Highland Tribes, you could play them as one of these Easterling men of the resistance. And that would be an interesting sort of reward unit for you to get. Here we're executing a charge on the Dragon Slayers, this Dwarven bodyguard unit, for the League of the North. In terms of other units, though, that's not all you get, because we did add the Orocarni Mountains for a reason. And that is because you do get some dwarves as the Highland Tribes. You get 4 dwarven units. This one right here we're looking at, the Eastland Dwarf Champions, is your tier 4. This is the highest tier of dwarven unit you'll get. You'll notice that they have a sort of a different direction in terms of their look and their armament. And this is because we wanted this to be representative of the very different sort of dwarven fighting styles and armament styles that you might find in different parts of Middle-earth. We're very familiar, of course, with the heavily armed, very defensively oriented dwarves that you see in the west, Khazad-dûm, and even in the Iron Hills and so on. So we wanted these eastern dwarves to be a little bit different. So they've got these long two-handed swords. Other dwarven units are these Eastland dwarf warriors with warhammers, shields, a bit higher attack and lower defense perhaps than the other dwarven units you might expect. We also get some Eastland dwarf slingers. They do have axes as a melee weapon. So a sling for the dwarves, we thought that would be kind of an interesting choice. And we also have somewhere else, let's see, I think they're in here. Yes, let's pause the action here for a moment. The Eastland Dwarf Militia. So this is a spear unit, very hardy, but this is going to be your tier 1. So the kind of backstory that we established for the faction is that the Highland Tribes are a mannish faction that has, of course, set up its own resistance in one way or another to the other Wainriders, and they've gone into the Highlands, into the Orocarni, where they have found these other dwarves, or these dwarves have found them, perhaps. These are some Easterling dwarves who have set up an expedition. Maybe they're exiles from their own clans, but one way or another, they're happy enough to ally with men in order to further their own ambitions, maybe to find new homes for themselves. Now, in terms of the recruitment, as the Highland Tribes, you'll be training mannish troops in your own mannish settlements, but you will start with one dwarven settlement in that Orocarni range, where you'll be able to train your dwarven units. And so part of the game will be finding new places that you can conquer to increase your dwarven recruitment options. So you may want to think about what is in the area of Middle-earth. Well, the closest strategically will be the Iron Hills, and that puts you into direct conflict with the League of the North, of course. You take the Iron Hills, you take Erebor, maybe you move into the Grey Mountains even, and that would be a pretty reasonable way for these Highland Tribes to expand. Another route might be to go sort of southwest, because on the opposite shore of the Sea of Rhûn, you do have that dwarven settlement you may remember from Dominion of Men, Nerrig Zagil. That will, I believe, start as a rebel settlement in this mod, and so if you can get there before, say, some of the other Wainriders do, you can grab that and then have another strong settlement for dwarven recruitment, but also a strong financial settlement. So there we go, killing the enemy general there. So it's going to be some interesting choices in terms of strategic expansion, because you're in the Highlands. That's going to be a nice advantage in case the other Wainriders come calling, because the terrain is going to be favorable to you and not favorable to their chariots and cavalry-heavy armies. But in order to expand, you're going to be fighting either the very strong League of the North, who boasts a somewhat similar mixed roster to your own, or you're going to be going sort of south and around the Sea of Rhûn, which is probably going to put you into conflict with the Avari Elves. So there's all sorts of fun strategic options for this faction. So I hope you enjoyed the look at the Highland Tribes, a faction I'm very eager to get my hands on when the campaign map is done. So as soon as we have more previews ready for you, we will get those up. So look for that in the coming weeks. Continue to follow the channel, and until the next time, folks, take care.